was undertaken by people whose passions have been inflamed by falsehoods and false hopes. Insurrection could do grave damage to our nation and reputation. In the United States of America, it is the fundamental responsibility of every patriotic citizen to support the rule of law. To those who are disappointed in the results of the election, our country is more important than the politics of the moment. Let the officials elected by the people fulfill their duties and represent our voices in peace and safety. May God continue to bless the United States of America. Now, again, George Bush is not a perfect man, and he was not a perfect president, but we'll have someone who understands, man himself, lost the popular vote, won the presidency. It was a controversial time, lived through the Iraq War, a very controversial time, but served 2 terms as president. In the middle there, he doesn't mention President Trump, but he says this assault today undertaken by people whose passions have been inflamed by falsehoods and false hopes. We know who he's talking about when he says that.
Yeah, and he says, let the officials elected by the people fulfill their duties and represent our voices in peace and safety. But we know one person who was elected by the people. That would be the President of the United States, who's clearly not fulfilling his duty as Commander-in-Chief and as President of the United States. It's interesting, John, that the statement released by former President George W. Bush is entitled "A Statement on the Insurrection at the Capitol." That's a very strong word, insurrection.
But it's a fair word. He's calling it like he sees it. And George W. Bush, again, whether you supported him or not, whether you agreed with him or not, he was always plain spoken. And he's calling, and it's also true, look, it's just a fact. There's no love lost between the Bush family and President Trump. And so there is some history, if you will. But remember, George W. Bush, a president for 2 terms, the son of a president who also served as vice president, a man who, again, you know, there can be a debate about his faults and policy, and people can have that debate. He so respected the office. He so respected the building. He so respected the institutions of government. He so respected the relationship. He so respected, even when he sparred with it, the news media. A president who understood because of how he was raised, because of he is compelled to speak. And so a very important statement here talking about the mayhem, insurrection, as you say. He doesn't mention President Trump, but there's just no question. Falsehoods, false hopes, and then essentially calling on other Republicans to step up. That's the main point of this statement, calling on the other Republicans who will get back in that Capitol building as soon as the security forces tell them it is secure and it is safe for them to go back in it. The former President George W. Bush hoping, look, the Bush name has become a dirty word in the Trump era of Republican politics, but hoping that people, I'll say, look to their better angels and get it right when they come back into that building.
Yeah, this is a 6-6 situation that has developed here in the nation's capital, and you got to quickly and directly point to the President of the United States for failure to do his job. Presidential historian Doug Brinkley is joining us right now. You know, Doug, give us a little historic perspective on what is unfolding in Washington.
Break in and vandalize our U.S. Capitol, rioting in the streets of Washington, disregarding public and federal property. It's a heinous moment. And usually when we think of being attacked in Washington, you tend to think, remember, you know, the War of 1812, when the British attacked us, or 9/11 and the scare that the Capitol was going to be a target, and you had an anthrax scare going on now. This group of Trump supporters who refuse to accept the outcome of this election have now terrorizing the entire Washington, D.C. metro area and are ostensibly shutting down other aspects of our government and country. The good news is there are surveillance cameras in the Capitol. People are going to have photographic evidence, and some of the faces that we've been watching on TV today will end up doing serious prison time for their crimes against the United States today.
And what's your perspective, Doug, on the behavior of the current President of the United States, who has 14 days left in office?
I think Donald Trump is ill. We've known he's an autocrat. We've known that he has a dictatorial bent. We know he has no sense of history. But since the election, his ego has been so bruised that he has organized an insurrection against the U.S. federal government. He has now burned his bridge with Vice President Pence, who could have perhaps pardoned him if Pence had become president for a day or a week. And now there's talk of the 25th Amendment. People at the Department of Defense or CIA, State Department, is Trump stable for the job? It appears not from the little video that he did on the White House lawn today saying he loves, how wonderful he loves these people that are breaking into the Capitol and turning people to flee in a sense of terror. We have 2 people that are shot. We have a curfew going, and Donald Trump will be implicated in this. This is a day of sedition. It's a word you usually use with, the John Adams era, or something in American history, and here we're witnessing it in real time. I think that you almost have Mike Pence right now is serving as the commander-in-chief of our country, while anybody in any federal bureau has to be keeping a close eye on Donald Trump because he's acting and thinking in an irrational way.
And in order for the 25th Amendment to the Constitution, Doug, to be really go into effect, it's the vice president who has to initiate all of this. The vice president has to insist that the current president is simply unfit to be commander-in-chief, to be president of the United States. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, that's exactly right, Wolf. And Vice President Pence now, if he chooses to, could start trying to organize that 25th Amendment. Our country's being held hostage right now by Donald Trump. Mitch McConnell and Speaker Pelosi can't even meet on the Capitol today. It was supposed to be the day of our great coronation to celebrate the beginning of a new presidency for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. So I think we now have to go into our Constitution kit bag and find what we can do to control Donald Trump. And certainly the 25th Amendment is there. It's an extreme measure. I never thought, Wolf, I'd ever think that could even occur in our lifetime. But we're living in very weird and strange times, as all the images of mayhem going on in Washington, D.C. shows us.
Yeah, and if you want to, he just posted, and let me get your quick reaction, Doug, before I move on. This is what the President of the United States just said. Hard to believe, but I'll repeat it. These are the things and events that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from great patriots who have been badly and unfairly treated for so long. Go home with love and in peace. Remember this day forever. We will remember this day, Doug, forever, but it's not the way the president wants us to remember it, because this is an awful day in American history. This is not a glorious moment.
No, President Trump's right. It is a day that will live in infamy, as Franklin Roosevelt said at the time of Pearl Harbor. But it's going to be about what happens in a democratic society when you have a totalitarian as president. We've at CNN have had pundit and speaker and expert for the last 4 years trying to warn the American people about who this man was. And here today, we've watched his behavior. He incited this rally and riot, and he will pay a very high cost in history and hopefully in the law, law also.
And he's praising these rioters. Let's go to Pamela Brown. She's getting more information. Pamela, the curfew went into effect, 22 minutes or so, 12 minutes or so ago. But give us a little bit more information that you're learning.
Well, we've just learned that what we saw today, there has been a death. I just got off the phone with the spokesperson for MPD, who tells me that the adult woman who we reported was in critical condition earlier today, she has now been pronounced dead. She was pronounced dead at the hospital, and now I'm told that D.C. police will take the lead in investigating this. We don't have any information about the circumstances of this or the identification of this woman, but there is video circulating that we are not showing right now, a disturbing video of the woman being treated inside, apparently inside the Capitol building today on the Capitol grounds. She is being treated there. She was transported to the hospital, and she has been pronounced dead. Well, there have been multiple injuries amid the mayhem today from not only the rioters, but also police officers there who have been injured. Some have been taken to the hospital. We know of at least one. But this is the first death that we know of from what we have seen unfold there today, Wolf.
So a deadly day in addition to everything else. Alex Marquardt, we see these individuals who are still marching. They're still moving around. There's a curfew supposedly in effect here in the nation's capital. They don't seem to care.
No, they don't, Wolf. We have to say that the number of Trump supporters of rioters has dramatically decreased, but there's still a very strong contingent. They are being pushed back forcefully, aggressively, but not violently by members of the Metropolitan Police Department. As we've been saying, this long line of MPD officers, some in riot gear, some not, have been slowly and methodically pushing them away from the western side of the Capitol, which is where much of this riot started this afternoon. This incursion into the Capitol building started this afternoon. So we have seen over the course of the past hour or so, as we built towards this curfew that, as you mentioned, has now been in effect for about 15 minutes, we have seen them slowly and methodically pushing people away. One interesting thing, Wolf, we just saw about a group of around 24 FBI agents heading towards the Capitol. That is one body, one law enforcement body that we had not seen earlier today. So far, it was mainly limited to different other federal law enforcement agencies as well as local law enforcement agencies. But what you're looking at now, Wolf, are the remnants of these rioters, at least from this side of the Capitol. I don't have visibility on what's happening on other sides of the Capitol. Who continue to chant and shout obscenities at law enforcement. They've been calling them traitors. They've been calling them sellouts, and they've been very, very angry. So there has been a large number of rioters have left, but there is still a strong presence. And I want to say something quickly about the symbolism. Of course, there are a lot of American flags out here, but I would say that those flags are outnumbered by Trump flags, and that really does give you a sense of where I believe the allegiance lies of so many of these rioters. Wolf?
Yeah, it's a really, really dangerous situation that's unfolding, and I suspect in the days to come, 14 days until the inauguration, it's going to become even more tense here in the nation's capital. Adoni is still with us. He's in the midst of one of the crowds that obey this 6 p.m. curfew.
Like the Lincoln Project, long a critic of the president, saying
where the Trump supporters, members of this mob, broke through a barrier. That's where the police moved them back to 6 p.m. when the curfew came in place. And a few minutes after 6 p.m., they began pushing the crowd back. The crowd did cooperate. It was peaceful. But as we were moving, you could hear instigators, people telling members of this crowd here, just saying, make the police move you, make them move you, to almost trying to provoke some form of confrontation here. The crowd is thinning out a little bit, and behind me we can see some people who are taking down barriers and moving barriers around. There seems to be some commotion. It is quite a tense scene here, Wolf. The police more police seem to be coming down the steps of the Capitol that I can see. So it's possible that these people who are now in breach of the 6 p.m. Washington, D.C. curfew will be moved further away from the Capitol. And we may see, sorry, 1 second. Yeah, we do see more people now moving in behind this police line, so we may be moved here in the next few minutes. Wolf?
People moving in, closer to the police? They're refusing to move away. Is that what you're saying, Donnie?
Yeah, we're seeing sort of some backup coming in for the police. But yeah, as you can see, there are some Trump supporters here who are trying to get in the police's face. Another thing, Wolf, is there's a lot of guys who are playing soldier here. They're dressed up in khakis, they're dressed up in camouflage and armor, but they don't serve their country. They're here, they think, I guess, that it's all a game. And that's the thing, Wolf. You know, all the people here, the folks that I've been speaking to here, they all just believe in this conspiracy theory taking over a not insignificant part of the American population. And we're being moved here a little bit again, Wolf. I think we should just move down the street here. You could see some police with shields been brought in here. And there's a sense, I think, in the next few moments that the police will try to push these Trump supporters further away from the Capitol. And of course, they've been here all day. They've been here from a few minutes after Trump finished speaking that speech, which was, again, full of lies and conspiracy theories. And when those supporters reached the Capitol and breached through those barriers. So this is finally clearing the mob out after many hours, Wolf.
Are these people that you're speaking to over there? You've done excellent reporting over these past many months on some of these fringe conspiracy groups, QAnon among others, in various parts of the country. Are you seeing those kinds of people where you are right now, Donny?
You know, Wolf, what we've learned from traveling the country over the past few months, speaking to many Trump supporters, is that so many people who support this president buy into these conspiracy theories. And although right now I can't see anybody with a sort of QAnon sticker or flag, what I have found, and it's unfortunate that, you know, as you begin talking with many of these folks, that is, they begin echoing these lines from QAnon, these conspiracy theories that get bopped around in the right-wing media circles online, on Trump media networks, alternative networks. Some folks that I've spoken to here today say they no longer watch Fox News because Fox News called the election for Biden. So that is sort of how far down a sort of rabbit hole of misinformation and mistruths that many of these people have gone down. And we are moving now. The police, as you can see there, are beginning with shields to gently and slowly try and move this line further away from the Capitol. And as you can see, these Trump supporters taking baby steps. They're going nowhere in a hurry. Even though we're now well beyond the 6 p.m. curfew, Wolf, and we're moving down a little bit from the line.
I just want you to be very, very careful over there, Donny, because this looks like potentially it could get even more ugly and dangerous in the coming minutes as we see the police beginning to move in. Are the police telling these rioters over there, do they have a bullhorn? Are they saying you must be off the streets? There is a curfew in effect. You will be arrested if you refuse to obey the law. Supposedly, these are individuals who claim they support law and order. Are they hearing these instructions from the police?
So no, the police, not at least from our position here, we haven't heard those sort of announcements come out from police, but there has been a lot more movement in the build-up and after that 6 p.m. curfew hour. I spoke to some folks here asking them, did they care that they were breaking this curfew? And some folks asked me sort of sarcastically, oh, what time is it? Oh, should I get out of here? People didn't seem too bothered by this. These, of course, the folks, many of these folks, some of them are actually holding pro-police flags and things like that while they create disruption here in the Capitol for the police. So there is no end to the irony, which is very often the case when talking to a lot of these folks. I mean, the people here today, some of these folks who caused the destruction, who drove through these barricades, they told me earlier they view themselves as patriots. They view any person who lives in the real world and sees Joe Biden as president-elect of the United States, they view them as the traitors. So folks are so far down these rabbit holes of misinformation as we see the police line now moving forward here just a bit again, Wolf. And folks, as we've seen all along here, we haven't seen so much the Trump supporters pushing back on the police line, but just taking those baby steps. And of course, past curfew here, Wolf.
Yeah, the president just moments ago in that tweet called them great patriots. Really a sick situation unfolding. Alex Marquardt, where are you?
We're a little bit not too far away from Donny O'Sullivan and what he is seeing as well. And what you're really getting a sense of right now, Wolf, so we're 23 minutes after the curfew, is a sense of significantly dwindled enthusiasm. These are not the fired up Trump supporters, not the fired up rioters who we saw protesting for much of the afternoon. This is much more muted. They are now being pushed westwards away from the Capitol towards the Washington Monument. The police line is encircling that group of protesters in their reflective vests with their helmets on, batons at the ready, pushing what has been an aggressive crowd, but not a violent crowd, at least for the past hour or so. We're not necessarily seeing violent altercations taking place as the police push them back. In the time that we've been back over here on this side of the Capitol, and certainly since the curfew has gone into place, we have not seen the police having to use things like pepper spray, tear gas, some of those pepper balls that we have seen in previous protests here in the nation's capital over the past year. But you are very much seeing this large crowd, and it still is a large crowd. No matter how much it has dwindled, there are still significant numbers out here of Trump supporters being pushed away from the Capitol. I spoke to what appeared to be a senior police officer as they were asking us to move as well. He said the intention was very much to clear the area, to make the Capitol a safe area after an incredible, surreal afternoon of violence. We have been using that word over and over again, surreal, because it simply is. To watch Americans breaking in to the Capitol building, scaling the walls of Congress has just been absolutely extraordinary to witness. What you're looking at now, Wolf, I'm going to ask my cameraman Ronnie to point over to the right. That line of police that we were talking about, they now have riot shields, tall plastic, clear riot shields that will help them in their efforts now to push back these protesters, these rioters. As you know all too well, Wolf, things can change very quickly when darkness falls. It is now dark out here. There is now a curfew. I would imagine that many of these people out here know that there is a curfew and are still resisting going home. So this is, if you will, a more hardcore element that has yet to melt away. But given the sheer magnitude of law enforcement out here, I would imagine that they will be rather effective in getting these rioters to leave this area. As we speak, Wolf, you can see them moving forward and pushing them away, and we're going to have to move out of the way very soon as well, Wolf.
Yeah, this curfew has gone into effect almost a half an hour, but these rioters, they have no intention, apparently, at least not now, of honoring the law and agreeing to leave. You know, Manu Raju, this information that we just got, that a woman who was shot inside the U.S. Capitol during the riots earlier today was now pronounced dead at a local D.C. hospital. You're there. You're inside the Capitol. Give us the latest on what's going on.
Well, if I can tell you that senior law enforcement officials in the Capitol, along with some key officials who deal with how the Senate floor operates, just had a meeting, and they walked into a meeting with a larger group of senators, presumably to brief them about what the plans are going to be tonight. And I can tell you that leaders on both sides of the aisle are pushing to continue with what they tried to do, these rioters trespassed and broke into the Capitol, is to continue with the electoral vote certification process. The goal is to get that done tonight. Also, the goal among Republicans in particular is to persuade those Republican objectors, the ones who have been dragging out this process. It's inevitable that Joe Biden will be president. They've tried to urge those objectors to drop their plans to drag out the proceeding. And right now, behind the scenes, some of those key senators are meeting. That includes Senators Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz, Marsha Blackburn, Mike Braun, among others, are having a private meeting to discuss their strategy. No word yet about whether they will continue to push ahead with their objections, but that's going to be a big question going forward. Also, outrage building among a lot of Republican senators and Democratic senators about what just transpired. A very, very strongly worded statement just came out from Mitt Romney, the 2012 Republican presidential nominee, Utah Republican senator, saying that he said he was going to deliver this speech on the floor of the Senate today to say that they're gathering to deal with the selfish man's injured pride who has deliberately misinformed his supporters. And he goes on to say that what happened here today was an insurrection incited by the President of the United States. Those who continue to support his dangerous gambit by objecting to the results of a legitimate democratic election will forever be seen as being complicit in an unprecedented attack against our democracy. They will be remembered for their role in this shameful episode in American history. That will be their legacy. Very, very strong words from the Republican presidential nominee from 2012, 9 years ago. And it just shows you the raw emotions that a lot of members are feeling on both sides of the aisle, trying to appeal to some of these Republicans who have been objecting to drop their objections, move forward quickly, show some unity after what we've all witnessed here on Capitol Hill today.
Yeah, and the acting Attorney General of the United States, Jeffrey Rosen, just issued a statement saying the violence at our nation's Capitol building is an intolerable attack on a fundamental institution of our democracy. The words continue to flow right now, Dana, but I don't know
of what happened in the moments, the minutes when these rioters came to the outside of the House chamber. And on the phone is Congressman Jason Crow of Colorado. And Congressman, we have a photo that's on CNN.com, and we're going to put up right now, that shows you reaching out on the floor of the House chamber, reaching out to Congresswoman Susan Wild. And you are, there you go, and you are, looks like you're trying to comfort her. Take us in that moment. What was going on?
Yeah, that was a very, very difficult time. I haven't been in a situation like that since, frankly, I've been in Iraq and Afghanistan as an Army Ranger. We were actually trapped in the House chamber at that time. The mob had descended and broke through the security cordon of the Capitol. They had already evacuated the leadership and the members who were on the floor. But those of us who were up in the gallery watching the debate had been trapped because the mob closed off the stairwells and had surrounded the chamber. So the police weren't able to get us out. So they actually closed and locked the doors and started to take furniture and barricade the doors and the windows with furniture as the mob tried to ram them down and was breaking through the windows. The police had their guns out and were prepared to defend us on the floor. But we were told to lay down. And you know, my friend Susan, of course, a dear friend, wanted to make sure that we were comforting each other.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Now that I look at it, it makes sense. You were up, sort of looking down on the House floor in the gallery. You mentioned you were a U.S. Army Ranger. You did 3 tours of duty in Iraq and Afghanistan. You were an 82nd Airborne Platoon leader. You were awarded the Bronze Star. How did that experience play into the moment that we're seeing now and what you just described in the beacon of, and the home of democracy, the U.S. Capitol, as an elected member of Congress?
Well, when I was an Army Ranger, I was trained to fight. And I joined because I love America, I love our country, and I've always wanted to defend her. And, you know, I went abroad and served 3 combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan to do that. I never thought that I would have to be in a situation of having to fight, certainly as a member of Congress, the United States Capitol on the House floor in the year 2021. It's surreal, and to be honest with you, I'm still processing that experience and coming to terms with it. But you know, we have some very serious questions that we need to answer here in the days ahead about what this means and what we have to do to respond to it.
And as we were speaking, Speaker Pelosi announced that the process is going to resume tonight. Do you know anything about what the plans are and how quickly that is going to begin?
Well, I think it's important that we do resume it tonight. It's our understanding that they are clearing, or maybe they've already cleared the Capitol at this point. We have to go back as soon as we can, and we need to complete this work, certify this election, and move our country forward. We will not be intimidated. We will not be browbeat. We will keep doing our work. It's the people's work, and the vast, vast majority of Americans are good, decent, hardworking people. Their voice will be heard. Their votes will be counted, and they will either be counted tonight or they will be counted tomorrow. But we will get this work done.
Congressman Jason Crow, thank you so much for calling.
The curfew in Washington, D.C., which was imposed by Mayor Muriel Bowser of Washington, D.C., the curfew was imposed, it started at 6 o'clock. At 6:40, and you still see lots of people in violation of the curfew. Let's go out to Brian Todd, who is among them reporting. Journalists are exempted from this. But it really is, Brian, pretty remarkable. I don't see a lot of action against people violating the curfew.
No. Please. What's up, guys? That's right, Jake. We're going to walk you down toward this crowd a little bit. Eddie, let's go down the hill a little bit. Okay. Some of these people are trying to harass us a little bit as we go down toward the crowd. These are people who were pushed way back in the perimeter from the Capitol toward the reflecting pool by some of the riot police. And you're right, a lot of these people probably are at risk of possibly being arrested at this point. And what you have over here to the left is a long line of
you sounds like you're in a Brian. It sounds like you're in a hairy situation there. So we're gonna let you escape. People who believe in the first. People who believe in the First Amendment only for their point of view is always in an interesting situation. One of Manu Raju is also reporting from the Capitol for us. Manu?
Yes, Senator Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leader, soon to be Senate Majority Leader, walking into a meeting with senators and other key staff, and we asked him, what is next here at the electoral vote certification? He said 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock, meaning 8 o'clock Eastern, is when they expect the Senate to reconvene to begin to continue with the process that was interrupted by these rioters who trespassed through the Capitol, to continue with the electoral vote certification process. So Schumer said 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern. So he walked into his meeting, didn't answer any other questions. We'll see if we get any more clarity coming out, especially if some of these
there, but even they must be shocked and dispirited at what they're seeing.
I think they are, and I think the president is feeling very isolated right now because he has been hearing all day from staffers who said he needed to put out a more forceful statement. Of course, the president then put out that video and then later tweeted defending what we saw happen on Capitol Hill today. His national security advisor, Robert O'Brien, who is incredibly closely aligned with the president and typically is a pretty fierce defender of his, is tweeting that he is in agreement with the vice president and the actions he took today, saying it took courage to do that, of course, as the president has been criticizing him and complaining about him all afternoon and focusing more on what Pence did than what has been happening with his supporters on Capitol Hill. And right now, the president is still in the West Wing, we are told. And Jake, I'm learning that the president does not want his Republican allies to drop their efforts to challenge Biden's win, to object to his win, what we're expecting to play out for several hours on the Senate floor today before, of course, the pro-Trump mob breached the building. And the president does not want them to stop. And there's been some discussion, our colleagues reported, among Republican senators about abandoning